Redditors, who had someone try to murder you? What happened? My mother was abusive. When she couldn't hit me anymore because of her arthritis, she would encourage my younger autistic sister to hit me, usually while our mom watched. As I got older, it escalated. There was this time in high school where I had decided to really fight back. I didn't care anymore about being punished for hitting back. But my sister was bigger than me, so she kicked my butt. Then when she was done kicking me, she got on top of me and started to choke me. I watched her squeeze a hamster to death a few years before, so I thought she would kill me too. And she had already threatened it a bunch of times before. I woke up on the floor of the living room with my sister crying next to me. She told me she thought I was dead and that she was sorry. She had never apologized to me before for anything, so I just kind of sat there confused for a minute. She couldn't stop sobbing, so I ended up comforting her and telling her that it was going to be okay. My father was in the Navy in Vietnam when I was born. He decided he did not want a child after all and declined to provide support until his CO was notified and forced him to send money home. While he was home on leave, he tried to suffocate me with a plastic bag. My grandfather confronted him with a .3006 hunting rifle and backed him out of the house. Holy, your grandpa is the grandpa I think everyone wishes they have. Walking to a nearby convenience store in the middle of the day when I was about 12. Some teenagers saw me and proceeded to actively try running me over with their car in the parking lot while laughing at me and calling me names. I didn't know the teenagers or even recognize them from somewhere. They just randomly decided to try and run over some kid because they thought it would be funny. Someone in the store must have called the police because as they drove off, they were pulled over by 2 cop cars down the road and everyone in the car was put in the back of the squad cars. Someone cut me off in traffic. I am talking like my bumper scraped theirs as they forced their way in front of me. So naturally I honked at them, and their perfectly sound and reasonable reaction was to shoot at my car through their back windshield multiple times before speeding off, hitting 2 other cars in the process. Was this LA? Dad was dating a real nice lady with a demon child from heck that didn't want her mom dating anybody. Whole family comes into town to meet new GF and I'm upstairs playing with her daughter. She then puts a belt around my neck and is choking me with it, so I try and crawl away and get down the stairs but can't scream. I started banging on the wall until my family came upstairs and found me blue in the face about to be strangled to death. My dad broke up with her that night, which I felt bad over, but her daughter was the spawn of Satan. Whoa, your dad sounds cool for getting you away from that crazy kid. Close call. English is not my first language, so I'm sorry for any errors. Anyway, the story is about my father who really liked to drink 24/7. He would often get angry and throw stuff around or threaten complete strangers, but he never harmed me or my brother, so we got used to it and just ignored it most of the time. But one day he got into a fist fight with some random guy at the gas station, where he liked to drink for 20 hours straight, and when he got home he was in a really bad mood. I took my brother and we left the apartment to go play football with the other kids in the park. At some point while we were playing, I lost the key to the basement that I had with me because our ball was locked in there, and when we got back home I told my father that I lost the key. He got so angry you wouldn't believe it. He started screaming and threw bottles and other stuff at us. He grabbed my brother, who was 6 years old, and punched him as hard as he could. And while I dragged him to the bed so he could lie down, my father called my mother and told her that he's going to end it and she can come pick up the corpses in an hour. I heard this and locked the door to our room, which made him even angrier. He was trying to break down the door with his bare hands. That didn't work, so he tried breaking the lock with a knife. Suddenly I hear some really loud noises followed by a bunch of voices yelling. The police broke the door to the apartment and stormed in. Father got arrested. My mother was so scared she looked like she was about to die, and I had to talk to a police officer for an hour about what happened. My father was not allowed to contact us again after this, but sometimes he would hang out in the street where our new apartment was, or he would come to our school and pretend that he was there to pick us up. He died 2 years later when he started a fight with some homeless guys and they beat him up and threw him down some stairs, broke his skull, and he died on the way to the hospital. I have never ever shed a single tear for that butthole. Your English is actually very good. Sorry this happened to you. My ex was extremely violent and controlling. He was trying to make me pregnant so I would be dependent on him and never leave him. Basically, he found out I'd been taking birth control pills. He poured boiling water over me as I slept and stabbed me multiple times. Thankfully a neighbor heard my screams and called the police. Sweet baby Jesus. Not as intense as the other stories here, but my mother put some sort of incense oil into my e-cig fluid. She had found out the day before that her parents were giving their property to me instead of her. I don't know what the oil was, but whenever she would burn it my eyes would swell and lungs would be raw for hours, and she knew it. Anyway, I had just refilled my tank that morning. I took a huge draw off the vape and immediately knew I was screwed because it tasted intensely of the oil. My lungs suddenly felt like they were trying to turn inside out while I started coughing uncontrollably and hacking up some sort of foam. It was so bad that every breath I took in felt like fire and kept me in a chain of violent coughing and dry heaving that kept making my abdomen spasm so hard it was like I was doing violent sit-ups over the. By the time it eased up I was collapsed onto the sink and barely conscious. I was drenched in sweat and my body hurt like I had pulled nearly every muscle in it. I lay down on the floor which was cold and that somehow felt better. I was there for what seemed to be a really long time, and I was so drained I couldn't do anything else. I didn't report it because who the frick is going to believe someone poisoned vape fluid? Even I had trouble comprehending the situation. I kept the bottle for a long time and occasionally would get it out to look at the obviously separated fluid where the oil didn't mix with the PG to remind myself that really happened. A few weeks later I also got a visit from Apps after she told them that I had strong-armed my grandparents into handing over the property to me and was stealing from them. Good times. Sorry for the run-on sentences. Whoever reads all that. I've never really typed all that out before and struggled to describe it. I think I see why your grandparents didn't want to leave anything to your mom. Oh my god, some of these are terrible and especially scary considering some were attacked randomly by strangers and I'm so sorry to all those who experienced something like that. I was almost murdered by a mother-in-law. She's literally the devil. She thought I was trying to keep her baby. No, not her son. My husband. She was calling my oldest kid her baby. She also thought I trapped my husband by getting pregnant. We were together for nearly 8 years at that time and married for 4 when I got pregnant. Anyways, she tried to set me up. One day I walked into my home with my oldest son while I was pregnant. I quickly ran into the bathroom to grab a towel or something. In there I found my milk covered in her own blood holding a knife. She starts to yell. I'm in shock, and then attacks me. She keeps saying how dare I try to kill her and take her away from her baby and how I was trying not to deprive my son from her love. I was trying to protect myself and out of the bathroom while trying to calm her down. At this point she stabs me in the chest when trying to stab my stomach. You're S and a W. My baby doesn't deserve you. How could he marry someone who tried to kill his mama? At this point I'm really in shock and realize she was trying to make it look like I attacked her and she was defending herself. I managed to run out and I yell at my son to go to X's house next door and a family friend and get help, which he does. I barricade myself in our office room. It had these heavy oak doors and try to control my bleeding. Mill is outside banging on the door complaining how I'm jealous of her and the love and relationship she shares with her son and my son and how I'm trying to isolate them from her. Anyways, cops came. She was arrested and I ended up in the hospital and lost the baby. This pales in comparison to some of the horror that these other folks have posted, but here goes. I had been dating a woman for about a year and we thought we would try living together. She started having dreams of me talking to other women. I laughed and thought she was just having some crazy dreams. One night a few weeks later I wake up to what I recognize as thin aluminum falling onto wood and then the tile floor, but I ignore it. Just the cat. The next day my brother tells me that my girlfriend confessed to him that she had almost beat my brains in with a baseball bat that night. A thin aluminum baseball bat. Later I talked about splitting up and she would get suicidal. After a year of this constant fear and physical as well as mental abuse I managed to convince her to leave me. It was okay since it was her idea. It wasn't simple. She married a few months later and came by to introduce him to my family. He realized how weird it was. About 4 years later and I haven't heard from her in over a year. Stay safe, folks. My brother tells me she confessed to him of wanting to beat my brains in with a baseball bat. I don't know how the frick you let that slide. When I was in the 5th grade there was a plot to set me on fire. Why exactly I don't know. I used to have to walk through a forest to get home every day from school, and over time this gigantic pit was dug by some of my schoolmates. A teacher overheard some kids talking about something odd, yanked one aside and he spilled the beans. I guess the day it was supposed to happen the principal pulled both me and my brother aside and had our parents come get us while a janitor went out to investigate. He caught a group of kids with a small can of gas and some of them playing with matches. That was an interesting day. I want to hear more. I was drunk, like really drunk, and fell on someone's beautiful car. I broke his side mirror. He saw me, took a knife off his jacket. He was really mad and tried to stab me. A friend saved me by pulling me away so the guy hit the wind, and my friend told the guy that I'll pay for the mirror. I paid and I'm still alive. One night my 2 stepbrothers and were walking down a dimly lit road beside a railroad switchyard at about 10 o'clock at night. As we were walking, a white truck drove by. We didn't notice that it turned around and drove toward us again. As it got closer, someone in the truck started shooting at us. Scared shitless, we took off running for the switchyard and the cover of the rail cars. We ran through the switchyard while someone in the truck screamed "Squeal piggies." We were all 3 pretty large. Eventually we reached the highway and a Hardee's where a cop was taking his break. I've never been more frightened in my life. I could hear the bullets hitting the rail cars. My girlfriend's ex ambushed us coming home one night, around 1 AM. He stepped from the garage and shot me in the chest. Then as my girlfriend pushed her son toward the dark bushes and told him to run, she tripped and fell. He shot her 6 times, in the head and chest with a .357, reloaded, and was scared off by the blazing security lights of our neighbor. Her son escaped because of the lights. I lived by playing dead, pulled my cell out when he ran off, and misdialed an old roommate because I thought holding 9 on a Nokia dialed 911. Got 911 and cops paramedics showed up after her son helped get a rag to cover what I thought was one hole. Necklace I was wearing deflected the bullet. Novelty dog tag. And bullet went sideways out chest and into arm. 1 bullet. 3 holes. 4 when they cut it out of my arm on other side where it stopped just under the skin. Her son is pretty freaked up by it all, to say the least. I've recovered mentally, I think. Lesson: don't get involved with crazy freaks. Screw the restraining order and move somewhere they won't find you. Your life isn't worth staying where you are and hoping. She was killed the day after she had the restraining order served. They only make things worse if someone thinks they'll have you or no one will. This scares the crap out of me. I currently have a restraining order against my ex for trying to kill me with our children present, and do not have the means to move away. He's literally 2 neighborhoods over, and honestly could show up at any time. When I was 17, I was home one night sitting in the dining room of my parents' house while on the phone. Since the conversation went on for a couple hours, talking to some girl, I got up from my seat to lay down on the floor and stretch out. It had just gotten dark, and as I bent over to lay down, I heard a bang, saw a flash, and noticed the curtain over the window behind my chair floating down from the ceiling. It took me a couple seconds. Then I realized someone had shot a gun into the house where I was just sitting. So, I ran over to check on my mother. Her room had windows leading to where the shooter was, and make sure she was alright. She was. Then, with all the lights off and no weapon, I head out the back door in hopes of coming around the side of the house to catch whoever the heck had just tried to shoot me. In retrospect, this was not a good plan. Fortunately, the shooter had gone and I was left waiting for the police. Based on the investigation, the police determined that someone had been in our front yard, waited for my mother's bedroom light to turn off. It illuminated the front area. House was on a hill, then shot into our dining room window from the porch. The bullet went through the front window, into our kitchen, and lodged in our refrigerator. The trajectory passed right through where my head would have been had I not laid down. The shooter was never found, and the police chalked it up to gang violence since I was a young Latino. 2 occasions by an ex-boyfriend when I was 19 and very stupid. I should have gotten away from him long before I did. Both times he was very drunk. We lived in ground level apt. I had kicked him out, but he showed up one night drunk, knocking on the window. I wouldn't let him in, so he punched the glass out and climbed in. He took one of the shards of glass, sliced his own arm with it, then came after me swinging it wildly, catching me on the arm as well, screaming he was going to kill me. Fortunately, neighbors heard the screams and were pounding on my door, which scared him off and cops were called. Second time was a few weeks later when I was moving out of the apt. Showed up drunk. My sister and her husband and husband's cousin were there. My sister lived 3 floors up from me in the same building. They wouldn't let him come into the building, so he went back to his car. I guess they thought he had left, so they went up to her apt. No, he went and got an axe out of his trunk. By stroke of luck, I happened to glance out the window and saw him coming up the steps to the building. I immediately kicked off my flip-flops and I took off bounding up the steps to my sister's apt. He gained on me fast and was swinging the axe at me from behind. I could hear it hitting the walls behind me. I made it to her door, which was unlocked, got it, slammed the door and locked it. He had so much adrenaline going he just ran right through the door like the freaking Hulk, where he was met by Bill and cousin. They quickly subdued him and held him until cops arrived. He was arrested and the last time I saw him was in court. Everything in this thread is terrible, but this actually stressed me out to read. My heart is pounding. Chased with an axe and murderous rage. Jesus freaking Christ. That is unreal. So glad you and your fam made it out safely and that sucker is put away. Holy heck. Also, my psychotic first boyfriend tried to strangle me once for no apparent reason. 1 second we were having sex and the next he started chasing me around the house with this crazy look in his eyes. He repetitively banged my head against the wall as he squeezed my neck. I was screaming bloody murder. His neighbor, big biker dude always outside working on bikes, overheard and came waltzing through the front door. He beat the crap out of my boyfriend and threatened if he ever pulled something like this he would blow his brains out. Luckily I got out of that crap soon after. I'm glad he had the perfect neighbor to do something about it. My mom was murdered by my abusive father. I was about 4 and saw what happened. He saw me and tried to kill me next, but the neighbor heard the screaming and called the police. The police came before he could even touch me, took him down and arrested him. He hung himself in prison 20 years later after the guilt ate him alive. I was on the highway, in the passing lane. My lane was merging into the next lane. I signal, and everything is clear for me to move over when a large pickup truck speeds up and prevents me from moving over. I brake hard, honk my horn and move over behind the truck. I'm in a 69 Volkswagen Beetle BTW. He didn't like me honking at him. He's in front of me but starts shadowing my every move, changing lanes when I change them, etc. He motions for me to pull over. I just want to get away from this guy at this point, so I start to pull over to the side of the road, and then quickly pass him when he starts to do the same. This was a bad move on my part since we were in traffic and I couldn't really get away from him. He eventually pulls alongside of me and says, "I'm going to run you off the freaking road," and rams the side of my car with his truck. I brake hard, and he brakes with me, again ramming my car with his truck. He pulls in front of me and motions for me to pull over again. We're approaching an exit that I want to use to get away from him, so at the right moment I fake a turn into the next lane to the left, and at the last moment cut across to the exit where I was able to get away from him. I contacted the police and provided them with a license plate number, description of the vehicle and driver. The guy lived several towns over, and it took about 2 weeks before the police were able to contact him. There was no damage to his truck, and he denied having any confrontation with me. I had arranged several meetings with the police to talk with them more about the incident, but the police officer didn't show up to any of them. They also suggested that I may have hit a wall on the highway and decided to blame this random person. I guess the large tire marks on the side of my car wasn't enough to convince them. I still remember his license plate number. Sounds like he had some cop friends. Not really sure if this counts, but I've seen a couple that are similar, so why not? Years ago I bought my first truck. I was so excited, tuned it up, got a good look to it, I was in love. At the time I lived next to someone I went to school with, but he wasn't the type that you'd actually voluntarily hang out with. He had a girlfriend, really trashy, that was actively cheating on him with a white trash guy, call him D. One night he confronted her about it, after she was sitting in his car on a dark corner for an hour. She claims she lost her phone while she was walking the streets. Small town, so him being a pushover offers to take her to look for it. It's being 11 PM and nothing to do. I drove them around. We get a couple miles away and we come up to the same intersection as D. Instantly they both yell me that he's got a gun and to floor it. Now, what's going on is D is jealous of the guy being with the girl and he doesn't like me for some reason. Never freaking met the guy. I sit for a second, he hits the gas right towards me and I take off going straight behind him. I see him turn around and he starts chasing us. Again, this is 11 PM in a town of 3,000 so there was not one freaking person around. He starts ramming my truck and my phone fumbles out of my hand. They're both screaming in my ear. We hit Main Saint, me in my lane and him in opposing traffic lane right next to me. I hit the brakes thinking he is pointing a gun right at me. This goes on for a half mile. I enter a closed restaurant's parking lot. He enters other entrance facing me. We slam head on and it blows my tire and forced my bumper against my wheel. I hop the curb and head back down Main and he guns in front of me and hit the brakes to where I'm facing his whole left side of the car. My tire is shot and my brakes are gone. Bam. I crumple his front half driver's side and we are parallel. He reaches in passenger door where she is, grabs fistful of hair and slams it repeatedly against the window. Now, this whole time I'm actually looking for the police department in a town I've lived in my whole life. This whole situation scatters my brain and I can't remember where it is. You will never ever know how you will react to situations until they happen. We hit a large bump in the road and bottom out on the other side at around 45-50 giving me and the girl a concussion. We eventually come to rest at a semi-populated gas station where he gets out and tries to punch my window open. The manager runs him off. The guy turned out not to have a gun, but possessed instead a .18 back. Sorry for the long story. Glad you made it out relatively safe, mate. Stepfather and mom were arguing, as was and still is usual, but this time they got very heated. I knew my younger siblings were upstairs in the same room as them so I went up to go grab them so I could sit them down in front of the TV with the volume on maximum. When I got in the room my mom was holding my younger brother. I gently took him from her arms and that's when my stepfather snapped. He turned on me and demanded I put him down. When I refused he grabbed me and squeezed me while I was still holding my brother. That's when my mom jumped in and took my brother. As soon as she had him in her arms, my stepdad grabbed me by the neck and started slamming me against the wall. I went for my pocket knife at that point, but my mom begged me not to open it. He went on to swear he didn't mean to hurt me, but when someone grabs you by the neck and slams your head against the wall it's hard to believe. Was chased onto the ice by a person with Down syndrome wielding an old-fashioned ice skate. He tried to stab me with the pointy end. I was engaged to an abusive man. I got pregnant. He did the usual threatening to kill me if I left him. One day he came home. He was a Navy corpsman and beat me really badly, kicking my belly with his boots until I had a miscarriage. I think his goal was to kill me as well. He kept me in the apartment and would not let me go to a doctor or hospital. Losing that baby is what gave me the courage to escape when I could. This is so terrible. I'm glad you're alright. My mom wanted a divorce. My father flipped his crap and shot me and my brother in our sleep, and then committed suicide. My brother died later at the hospital. I am so sorry. I'm not sure if she actually intended to kill me, but when I was 11 and my sister was 12 we were home alone after school and got into a fight. Not uncommon. She has bullied me my whole life. This time she goes into the kitchen and grabs a giant chopping knife and starts to chase me. I manage to run out of the back door, circle around to the front yard and come in the front door, and run down the hallway and lock myself in the bathroom. But it's in the first floor, so she goes outside around the back of the house and starts banging on the bathroom window, which promptly shatters. This calms her down a little bit, and she tries to get me to come out and she says she's sorry, but I stayed locked in there for 3 hours waiting for my dad to come home. We told him the broken window was an accident from trying to shut the window too hard. Oh, and she almost drowned me in a pool once and played it off like she was just dunking me as a game. But I knew better. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.